Okay, so we have hit Handmaid's Tale, Season 3, Episode 7, Under His Eye. So this episode had 3 storylines going on at once. So I'm going to start with June's story, then I'll cover the Waterfords, and then I will cover Canada. So we see here the winnowing fork, this device that is severely messed up that Gilead uses to hang people. This winnowing fork concept is straight from the Bible, Matthew 3:12. It's based off the device that was used to separate straw and chaff from the kernels of wheat, but it became a metaphor in the Bible for punishment of Jerusalem by God. And you get a direct quote from off Matthew here, obviously connecting that it's a Bible verse from Matthew, that it's clearing away the rotted so good can take root. So they're getting rid of these rotted members of Gilead that have done wrong. And this device was a nice little reminder too that Aunt Lydia is still a jackass. And anyone who's starting to feel sympathy for her, yes, she's a complicated character, but I love that they always remind you about these characters and what we already know about them that are just terrible, but we need reminders so we don't trick ourselves in a way. And now this episode was really interesting to me because we got now more into this character of off Matthew. She says about the woman hung in the beginning that she mistreated her child, wasn't paying attention to it crying. And June's like, yeah, great reason to hang someone. And off Matthew's like, yeah, it certainly is. And you see off Matthew's having baby pains. June notices this. And you see off Matthew is like, I always love being with child. She has so much experience with this clearly. And she's like, this time though was difficult. So you get these like little glimpses of her rational thinking, which she's truly believing deep down that she's suppressing. And June's like, when I was pregnant with Nicole, I had thoughts I would be ashamed to admit now. And off Matthew snaps at this and she's like, well, I don't have any thoughts like that. My child is a blessing. Ashley Lathrop is playing this great. Off Matthew's a very challenging character to pull off, to show in her face that she has doubt about Gilead and everything that's going on, but always goes back to the book. She's your classmate who just goes, teacher, teacher, you forgot to give us homework. And she clearly is also suffering, I believe, from Stockholm Syndrome to the extreme. I mean, we know she's already had so many kids here in Gilead in this messed up way. And I think what's so interesting about her character is you see, yeah, all this bad stuff's happening to these women, but you either revolt or you fully become one, and she's the case of just becoming one of Gilead in a sense, and that's her survival mechanism. And it's like the complete opposite way that June handles things. So it's very interesting. And I like they're going that route with off Matthew. I think we need a character that was a handmaid that was kind of like that. And I'm happy they didn't go to where some people's theory was, oh, she has this master plan. Everyone thinks these characters have this master plan to get the bad guy, but no, they're all so complicated and have their own sick, twisted intentions. And honestly, this off Matthew stuff blew me away. I love how they completely shocked me in this one. If there's one episode you must watch twice, it is this one. When I watched it a second time knowing what the twist is at the end, watch this grocery store scene again. The way they film it, hauntingly having off Matthew watching June, knowing now what's going on, is crazy. It's such an attention to detail on the director's part, and it's really some of the best work I've seen in Handmaid's Tale to date. But what's really important here is when they come in, you got June and off Matthew next to each other talking to Alma and another handmaid, and Alma's like, hey June, let's go get some fruit cocktails. And off Matthew's like, oh, I love fruit cocktails. But then the other handmaid's like, oh no, come with me, let's look at this, to get her away. So right there, you're already building suspicion in off Matthew. And what's so important is June quickly says to Alma, really? Fruit cocktails? And Alma's like, I'm crappy at improv. This was just a light joke to you on your first watch, but this ended up being a huge mistake on Alma's part and on June's, but mostly on Alma. Like, you can't take anything light and cheat your way in Gilead. If there was more of a convincing act there and they didn't underestimate off Matthew's suspicions, they probably wouldn't even be in this situation they get in later in the episode. And then, what I love again, the cinematographer in Handmaid's Tale is a master at their craft, and I love how they shot when she's talking to the Martha of the Mackenzies through the refrigerators and them going between them. And June's like, my commander can get us all out of here. You can be free. And the Martha's like, to put a child in that danger is pretty selfish. And June's kind of snippy at this, and she's like, well, she would be with her real parents. Serena, is that you? This was so important because this is starting to give you that dark side of June now in this episode, and that she was manipulating this Martha here for her own needs to see her kid. And this is someone completely innocent she's doing this to, who's only been helping her since the beginning, and is pushy about it. This is where June's not thinking rationally about Hannah's situation, and she becomes a little bit like a Serena. I mean, being around Serena, you're gonna pick some of that up. And I like they kind of threw that kind of line there with June. It just gave you that feeling like, damn, she does have some of that in her. And brilliantly, the way they end this scene with June leaving the fridge, and really quickly, you see out of focus is off Matthew in the corner, and then it comes into focus, and you really quickly see her looking, and that she caught all of that. And June did not cover her tracks. But again, those little details, I didn't catch them the first time. If you did on the first watch, props to you, but it took me a second time, but it's awesome that they did that. And just to go more into this part of June where she's manipulating innocent people, look at how she goes upstairs to Mrs. Lawrence now to use her to get to Hannah. And it's interesting even going in Miss Lawrence's bedroom because it's, again, this dark cave. The curtains are closed, and June knows she's got to open that window, show her the light, get her out there, which is a good thing. But she's, again, pushy, and she's like, no, don't worry. I'll take care of you. Don't worry about what Commander Lawrence is going to think. So the manipulating kind of continues. And Miss Winslow's got insane cabin fever here. It's nice to see her get outside, but they run to Miss Putnam. And Miss Putnam's like, I haven't seen you in ages. And you see Mrs. Winslow's like looking at the baby, and she's like, we thought you were going to die, but you didn't die. It's like she's so out of touch and forgetting how to just properly socialize too with just other people, because she literally says it again in the scene, and she's like, I'm so glad she didn't die. And it's also showing too clearly that Miss Winslow has got more sense to her and knows these real threats in Gilead, especially with the children. But she's still totally off her rocker, and Miss Putnam notices it, suspicious, and she's suspicious why she just abruptly leaves the conversation is with June. So Miss Lawrence now is having a reflective moment on the bridge. She opens up to June about how she wanted a kid, Commander Lawrence didn't, and that she was a teacher, and then she got bipolar, and they upped her dose, and they kept switching her dose. And June's like, look, you know, being a mother in Gilead poses its own challenges. And Miss Lawrence is like, maybe we did the right thing. And June starts to feel a little guilty now about being manipulative and lying here to Miss Lawrence, and she confesses to Miss Lawrence that she was lying, and that she's really doing this to see her kid. But Miss Lawrence is down. She's like, let's go on an adventure. But also when they're walking in the tunnel here and the scene's about to close out, you see way in the distance a handmaid that's watching them, and it's very blurry. Again, this could have been off Matthew, I'm not sure though, but she might have been looking for her walking partner. So when they get to this school, it's crazy because it's really just a prison yard, and it's heavily guarded, showing you Gilead really does value this concept of reproducing now and these children. I mean, it's just haunting seeing the barbed wire, and there's literally guards on the roof. So your big red flag in this episode is when Miss Lawrence asks for Commander Parker, who the Martha told June to see, and they say he's not there. So at that point, you know operation was already off and something happened. And clearly Aunt Lydia had wind at this moment and took care of him. So they let Miss Lawrence in, but not June. And I kind of laugh out loud at June's face when they kind of just slammed the gate in her, because she was like, ooh, I'm going in, and then just boom. So this sequence of June just running around the wall here and feeling for the wall and listening for Hannah was very powerful. It got me teary-eyed because of the flashback. And I love when shows go back to something rooted since season 1. And obviously that's her losing her kid, Hannah, and reminding us again why she stayed last season. And it just worked visually with the wall just between them. They're that close, but yet so separated. And how that just motherly instinct to hear for her kid. It was really touching. And a nice reminder why June's still driven through all this and not giving up. So now we see Miss Lawrence is having like a mental episode here. And is like, let me see the children. You said you let me see. And then June can just tell, and then she tells the guardian she's having health issues. Miss Lawrence is like this little puppy dog. You feel so bad for her. She's trying, but June knows here she cannot push this anymore, especially because of what's happening to Miss Lawrence. And you even see when they get back on the bed, Miss Lawrence is like, I really tried, I'm sorry. It just made me really like her character a ton. And they usually cast the show really well, and to me that actress just has the perfect aura about her that makes her so likable, and that puppy dog effect. So you see the commander just puts her back in her bed, back in the dark room, and this just makes me really hope this season we get an episode focused solely on the two of them, explain that whole relationship, what is really going on. And June throws her 2 cents into the commander's like, look, you should have seen her out there, she came alive. So what is his total justification for keeping her totally locked in a room like that? We shall see. So now we're back where we started in the episode, where we get a shot again of the handmaids walking along the rope, and Alma's like, the Mackenzies are gone. What happened? What was perfect is they give you a little quick shot of off Matthew smirking. And it's right after Aunt Lydia's like praising that these people were caught for the gravest of sin, endangerment of a child. And off Matthew's just like, yep, that was me. I did the right thing with that face she's making. But I do want to call a timeout here. The plot armor police is going to come out. They're going to say, oh, realistically, June should be hung with them. That's what realistically would happen. But this, thank God, is explained later on in the episode when off Matthew says, Aunt Lydia told me to watch you and to protect you. So yes, Aunt Lydia was aware that June did this, but she has her back now from that conversation they had last episode, and probably told and kept it that the Martha was the one who would pay for it. Thank God they threw that line in though, because if they didn't, that would be terribly unbelievable that she wouldn't be hung as well. And this is so just chilling and so tragic, where you see it's the Martha that's been helping June this whole time, and June doesn't even want to grab that rope. And Aunt Lydia's like, no one escapes her sacred duty. This is just gut-wrenching. And she has to kill the girls, helped her since the beginning and be a part of that. Terribly sad. And again, I'm assuming the Guardian that's in that shot is the Guardian Parker. And this is just so brutal to watch. And you see June has no other choice but to go through with this, and she kind of just looks kind of mean about it and says buy his hand, but this is the only thing she can do or she's going to completely crumble here. And I was so worried they would end on that, but they didn't, thank God. And we see June is just frozen in place. And again, you get this smirk from off Matthew, giving a little hint of what's really going on. And clearly this incident's going to mess up June even more than she already has been messed up. This will be the biggest guilt I think she'll have weighing on her conscience. And then we get June walking up, and then she bumps into off Matthew, and off Matthew says, you should be thankful your temptation has been lifted. And right when they show the extreme close-up on Lizzie's eye, and she says, what did you do? I got goosebumps. And off Matthew perfectly just says, I saw you talking to that Martha. Aunt Lydia told me to watch you and to protect you. And the tear from June here is perfect. This was my favorite moment, personally, with June yet. And Elisabeth Moss completely crushed this to portray all this rage she's had inside herself. And yes, she snapped before, but this was different level. This was, everything was coming out here that she was gonna kill off Matthew in this moment. It was so earned. And I love she takes the cover of her bonnet off like someone taking their gloves off before a fight. And she's like, what did you say to her? And off Matthew's like, I saved you. And just her running up to her, choking her. And she's like, do you have any idea what you've done? You effing B word. That was perfect. Just the rage in Elisabeth Moss's eyes was, oh my God. And I love how Janine's like kind of covering for her and freaking out in that type of situation. And Alma grabs her to calm her down. That's the type of scene I can replay right from the line where off Matthew says, you should be thankful. Literally over and over I watched that. It was just a fantastic moment. So now let's jump to the Waterford timeline in this episode. So we see Serena's with Miss Winslow in DC, and Miss Winslow's selling on her to live here, and that she shows her an unrestored house. And very chilling even being in that environment, seeing the kids' shoes. A nice touch on the continuity director using an Xbox 360 controller, not an Xbox One controller, so it perfectly fits the timeline of the show. I always appreciate that. And you see this house was clearly raided. She says Baptist lived here, and it was just chilling to see that picture of the family that lived there, and they're probably mostly dead or serving Gilead now. And it's just such a creepy line when Miss Winslow mentions there's already a bunk bed here for your kids in the future. Oof. Can you imagine, like, yeah, where'd you get this bunk bed, Mom? Oh, some dead children used to have it. You see Serena, this is what's gonna really suck her in, is again, looking at this baby crib, thinking of Nicole in it. So we jump to Fred with Commander Winslow, and he's saying they're having progress with Canada here. And he's like, so much leverage comes from the child, and worries about, oh, if she comes back home, that might change. And he says, you brought us to this point, Fred. If you do this, Gilead will know who to credit. I love they added this interesting plot twist to the story. Fred's finally got his girl back, and now already he's given the decision, really, your wife or your career? This is the ultimate lie he would be giving his wife, not telling her that he's keeping Nicole from coming back. And of course, sleazy Waterford is gonna choose his career. But this made this super interesting. I'm really digging this DC story. So you see Serena now has dinner with Fred, and they're talking about back in the day, they skipped out on a family event to go to an art gallery. And Fred mentions how he skipped fishing. And he's like, what was I gonna do? Kill innocent creatures or look at art with my wife? Again, just nice writing, because it's exactly the situation now where, yeah, is he just gonna work his way up the ladder and kill innocent people, or actually embrace his wife and be good to her? And we know it's the other way, killing the creatures. And he's like, I'm bringing Nicole back as soon as I can. And even Serena, we know she's got a strong political background. She's a smart woman in that field. Is like, I was getting worried and afraid that they would figure out that Nicole might make more sense politically to stay in Canada. And Fred's like, oh, some believe that, but not me. Joseph Fiennes played that line perfectly. He's got a mix of guilt in there, fear, and he could not keep the straightest face, and it's just perfectly portrayed, playing that lie perfectly. So I really love the setting here and the production design of like this hallway they're coming down. It just reminds me of The Shining and the Shining-esque ballroom scene. It gives like a horror effect to it, and it's as snooty as you can get of an environment. And Serena's meeting her new little club here, but if you thought her original club was bad, they've just upped the ante. And that's, again, what I love about DC is everything's upping the ante. And look at her just falling madly in love with Fred again, like it's the beginning of their relationship all over. And you get this dance scene. And watching this scene, I really liked it. It's showing us these villains we love to hate in a way. It's the villain couple. It's iconic. That's why I'm happy they didn't go full Serena good guy this season, which the trailer was teasing. I think she still is best as a villain with Fred, and I think we'll get more satisfied as an audience that she doesn't turn for good and that she gets her just desserts. And clearly DC is going to be the end of them, and it's pinning them against each other, and Serena doesn't even know it because she's looking as like she's falling back for the man she used to love. And the second Fred gets her back, everything he wanted, he's already ready to sacrifice that for his career with the lie. So let's jump to the Canada timeline, and we see now Emily is with her wife, and we see this is the Swiss lady again. And she wants the details on all the crimes Emily did in Gilead and what they consider, obviously, are crimes. And they mention her striking a guard and her stabbing Aunt Lydia. But smartly, the part she left out was her poisoning that wife in the colonies. That was clearly her grayest move and least justifiable to a government that's outside of Gilead. It's her darkest move to date. And this scene made me less trustful of the Swiss even more. Just the way she talked about it seemed very businesslike and just different intentions and not caring and almost looking at things they could possibly use against the refugees, which is really scary. But you see the wife is understanding what Emily had to do here in this situation. She's cool about it, but she doesn't know the poisoning thing, which she talks later in episode 2 Moira about. So we see though Moira and Emily are at this coffee shop, and I love that Moira's slamming into Canada here, saying they need to protect the baby and grow some balls. And come on, isn't Samira Wiley just so damn great? I mean, she's the type of actress that's just so good at being realistic and natural. And another actor I see that way is like a Mark Ruffalo type, where I never feel like they're acting, they're just being real, and she is so good at that. It's my favorite type of acting, and I just wish we got more of her. And it was interesting in this scene to see how reserved Emily is and was before this time. You forget that because she became such a badass in Gilead. But you know, Moira's loose, so I feel like, again, why I would love these two to get together is they really are effective opposites that would work together and bring out the best, I think. I thought it was funny, the line where she's like, how do we have no game in common? This has to be the first time in lesbian history. So you see, I like they're showing Moira doing something here. She's going to protest the Canadian minister. And Emily wants to come, so she's still got the fire there. I guess Luke was busy, but it's really good to see Moira doing something, screaming at the minister. How can you even consider negotiating with Gilead? And Emily's getting digs in too, but you see these men are holding her back and holding Moira back, and it's kind of like a little bit of Gilead in Canada. It's everywhere. Again, some of these Canadian scenes still feel weird though and kind of forced, a little cheesy. This one did too, with all the protesters. I really think what this show needs is just to hire a writer that has a lot of experience writing political drama and let them solely focus on the Canadian politics here and make this a little more interesting. I still think the show struggles with that and is afraid to dip their toes into it, but I think we're getting to like, come on, let's get there. They're kind of getting there with the Swiss, but they really need to get someone in Canada just right in that Canadian government angle, because it really has not been touched enough. So we see Moira and Emily are in the doghouse now, and this is a really good scene, really good writing. And she tells Moira about poisoning the wife, and Moira opens up to her about killing a commander in his sleep, and she didn't have to. And the best line's Emily saying, look what they turned us into. And Moira grabs her and says, have you killed anyone since you've been back? And she's like, no. And then Moira's like, no. And Moira's like, so I think we're good. Again, Moira being the coolest character. Can't wait to see more of her. And I love that they have Emily and her together. It just works, giving that Canada storyline a little more juice. So wrapping up my whole take on this episode, this felt like the most original episode of Handmaid's Tale yet compared to other Handmaid's Tale episodes. I think having this underlying twist be revealed later on and hinted at with off Matthew through the grocery store was just awesome. It was a challenge for the show in its own right, and they pulled it off great. Felt like something out of a David Fincher movie. I love how much this episode talked about trust and deceit and lying, and such a mix of different character types and how they all view everything. And that was also a huge reveal that Lydia is looking after June in a different way. And I'm sure that's leading up to next episode, which is all going to be about Aunt Lydia's backstory, so that should be super exciting. I cannot wait. And look, not to toot my own horn, but I called it about off Matthew that yes, she is seriously right now to the book Team Gilead. That's her character. And yes, deep down she doesn't believe in it, but this is her survival mechanism, and she will tear anybody down for herself. She's not Team Handmaid. And you just wonder how she'll react after that throat attack from June. And I love this Fred secret they've given him now, just to juice up that story with the Winslows. So I really think this episode kept the momentum up from last episode. Handmaid's Tale notoriously gets hot in the middle of the season and usually doesn't let go all the way till the end, so I'm happy we're seeing that again. And to me, my favorite June moment was when she yelled at off Matthew, and my favorite Elisabeth Moss moment. She keeps topping herself. That was incredible. It was the most gut-wrenching moment for me. Wow. I'm giving this episode a 9.5. Let me know what you thought of it down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give me any theories you have as well. Please subscribe so you don't miss one of my reviews of The Handmaid's Tale. I'll be doing every episode. Make sure to also check out my reviews of Big Little Lies as well. Please like this video. Please share it. Get the word out if you can. I really appreciate it. And please follow me at SteveVarley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. Praise be, and I'll see you next time.